Okay, so it's 30 years later, I think, and we finally have a new Mad Max movie. An actual, legitimate George Miller Mad Max movie. Nothing straight to video, nothing through somebody else's eyes that has no grasp on the other movies at all. No, it is the real thing here 30 years later. I think Beyond Thunderdome was 85. And yeah, so if you've seen Beyond Thunderdome, you know it had no other place to go but up, hopefully. So, he had a co, like, the only, Beyond Thunderdome is the only one where he had a co-director. Maybe that's how that became what it was. I mean, I don't hate it or anything, but it's, you know, if you watch them all together like that, Beyond Thunderdome really stands out, and not in the best way. So now we do have, obviously, instead of Mel Gibson, we now have Tom Hardy in his place. And apparently there was a rumor that Gibson was supposed to have a cameo in this, which was, that rumor surfaced even more so when he showed up at the premiere, but I think you've heard by now that that's not the case. I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm going to say that you've probably heard by now, because the reviews for this movie are already coming out very, very quickly, and gaining a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So, I'll do I don't really, so I can do this authentically, I don't really look at reviews ahead of time, so I don't know. The only downside to that is I don't know what I'm telling you that you already know, so you just have to deal with that.
I think they know that by now.
Yeah. Okay. So, it keeps in the exact tone of, the other movies. We kind of have Max's story, and then we're introduced to a paper-thin storyline that kind of just gets things going. Because the storylines in these movies are basically MacGuffins just to get the action going.
Yeah.
And then there's usually a group of people that he has to help, or that he has to, you know, keep from killing him and then help. And then there's a big-ass car chase. That is the layout of all four of these movies. And this one is no different in that regard. And we love it for that. That's not a problem or a criticism or anything. From what I was hearing from the reviews, this was much more, people were wondering exactly what kind of tone it was going to take, because even though they all have that basic outline to them, all three of the original ones are very different in all, because a lot of people think the first movie is a little slow. I guess because they're so used to it, because the Road Warrior tends to be the most beloved of them by most people, and the Road Warrior is the one that's really, really action packed, and then you have Beyond Thunderdome's kind of the bastard child, but people still kind of like it, and some people really, really don't. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't know, the first one was always my personal favorite, but anyway, yeah, this is kind of, it was to my understanding before I went in that this was more in the Road Warrior vein, and that's pretty much right. Even though, the very interesting thing that we have, the guy who played Toad, or the villain in the original movie, is now playing a different character in this one, who is also the villain. So that was kind of a nice callback. Like, the big question, I guess I should tackle this before we get there, by the way. I was trying to figure out if we were supposed to take something from that other than the fact it's just the same actor playing a different character, and obviously the big question that everybody's asking is it Mad Max 4, or is it a prequel, or is it a reboot? It's definitely not a prequel. Whether it is Mad Max 4, whether it's a reboot, it doesn't really tell you directly. It's kind of hard to tell. They don't really, there's no real, unless there's like really, really small things in there, like there's, which I wouldn't put it past, because the Road Warrior has a lot of really, really small details that you don't see unless you like read up on them or you've seen the movie a billion times. So there might be tiny, tiny clues in there, for like massive, massive fans of the original movies that hint at whether or not it's a reboot or another sequel. I don't know. The way it's set up, I think you can really take it either way. In my head, I was just kind of going on, it's another sequel, like it's just a continuation. Is there, oh, was it, okay, it's officially announced that it's a reboot, I guess. Okay, because the opening scene is a lot like the Australians won't know what I'm talking about, but because they don't have this, because I guess they know better. But everybody else, we need this little introduction that tells us Max's story over again, because we apparently totally forgot what happened in the first movie, where it's in black and white and there's narration and they're saying everything. That's how they open this one too, and it's also kind of funny. There is kind of I guess you could say a throwback to Beyond Thunderdome, where it starts with Max has like the beard and the long hair, and then he ends up getting it cut off after he's taken away, and it's, there's all kinds of things in there to remind you of the other ones for sure. But the great thing about this is not only does it keep in the same vein as the other movies, and it keeps in the same, you know, style and outline and everything. Miller also thought to say, well, it's 30 years later and there's more technology in my hands and I can do more things. So he basically took his other what everybody loved about the other movies, the craziness of everything, particularly in those car chases, and he amped it up about 20 times over. Because there is a lot of crazy shit in those movies, particularly the Road Warrior, when things really go off. The guy, Lord Humongous, who is the villain in the Road Warrior, is basically Jason Voorhees before Jason Voorhees happened. So, but now we have this, I don't know how to describe what Immortan Joe is, but as we were talking about on the way over here, he does look like something out of a horror movie. And that's what these movies are really known for, is how they're these, you know, post-apocalyptic action movies, but most of the characters in them look like they're straight out of some freaky-ass horror movie.
Yeah.
And that meshing together is always fantastic. And it just really goes off the wall this time. Like, if you thought like what the Road Warrior did was insane, yeah, he's really taking up. What I do like is apparently he wasn't taking too much advantage of it being 30 years after the last one, because generally, George Lucas, for instance, sometimes when people have today's technology at their fingertips, all they want to do is say, let's CGI everything, that's easier, the end. Because we can do that now. It's my understanding Miller really stuck with the authentic effects as much as possible. I gotta mention this real quick. In order to be able, scheduling-wise, because things are weird like that, we had to do something that I really didn't want to do. We had to watch this in 3D. Which, apparently the plan was to shoot it in 3D, but then I don't know if they ran out on the budget or they ran out of time or what, but they just decided to shoot it in 2D and then convert it. And obviously, as we all know, every single person that's ever been to a movie in the world knows that 3D conversion is one of the worst things in the world.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, it can work, like, you know, there are a couple of things, but for the most part, I hugely prefer seeing a movie in 2D, and I really wish that we had seen this in 2D. There was nothing that made me think otherwise.
Nope.
And I think maybe, I'm not sure, maybe I'd be more enthusiastic about it if we had. I don't know, I have no idea how much it was affected by it, because, as I mentioned before, you can probably guess, almost every review for this movie so far has been people just going fucking insane.
I've heard about that.
So, yeah, and, well, here's the thing, though. The Road Warrior is a movie I really like. I've always really liked. But it's a movie a lot of people go crazy for, and I never felt that way about the other movies. But I do really like them. That video I did of Mad Max exists somewhere. I think that was from like a year or two ago. I don't know anymore. But yeah, and we have new characters also, like Furiosa, who is Charlize Theron, who's basically trying to get home. That's basically her story. There's more to it, but I'll let you see it unravel. And we have Nux, who is Nicholas Hoult, there are these, they look, I don't know, they remind me of something, but I can't put my finger on it.
It's the same thing. I'm trying to figure out what they remind me of, but they do remind me of something.
They're called the War Boys, and they basically worship Immortan Joe and do whatever he says, and yeah, there's that great scene where he makes eye contact with him.
I love that.
It's the greatest day of his life because of this.
He was just looking over the horizon.
Yeah. And he's kind of a stowaway with them, and he's kind of flip-flopping back and forth between whether he's on the good side or the bad side. He's kind of a neutral party, I guess, for the most part. But he's like the only character that gets a real, arc in his story, so I think people will, he's really good in it, and I think people will take to that character. Probably more so than some of the other new characters. There's a few recognizable faces in the Immortan Joe's girls, one of which is carrying his child, and there's Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, I think, was in there, and Zoe Kravitz, and that girl from Magic Mike, whose name I can't pronounce. Her name is Riley, that girl. That was in that weird werewolf movie with Juno Temple that I can stay away from as far away from as possible. Yeah, as you've probably heard, there was one thing that was I kind of wish I didn't know about going in. There was one thing. Luckily, I didn't see anything beforehand, but there was one thing where I saw something, I don't know if it was in a review or a headline or something, but somebody just said the words, "You had me at flamethrower guitar."
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a character in this movie who is obviously, when you have these car chases in these Mad Max movies, there's always a whole army of them, and there's always something fucking crazy about them. Once again, in Beyond Thunderdome, we were kind of getting less and less in quality, and the most we had was the cow print car, or whatever that was. But yes, we're upping things as much as they can possibly go. There's the car that is just entirely made of spikes.
The porcupine car.
Yes, and not to mention this entire big-ass chase scene that's like the entire first half hour of the movie, where Max is basically Nux's hood ornament. And everybody loves to put Tom Hardy in a mask now that covers the bottom half of his face.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point I was getting at was atop one of these giant vehicles is this one-man rock band dude, and that's all he does. He has a giant wall of speakers behind him and an electric guitar that's also a flamethrower. And he's basically there to rev everybody up. And it's awesome how he's like, you would think this was kind of a bad as far as a tactical sense, but he's the way you can tell like when they're coming for you. Like, you always kind of hear him in the distance, because the movie's just kind of, the movie's basically a constant car chase that has a lot of stops in it, because some are so far ahead of others, and there's always the warning of when they're coming, because you can hear the guitar guy in the very distance. I thought that was a little cool, and like I said, not the best if you're trying, to sneak up on them or anything, but nobody in this world's concerned about that.
No. They just want their water.
Yes. And they do actually go for some very, very risky things for being a big budget blockbuster movie. I don't know how much of this is giving things away, but I'll just say there's a scene involving a baby that you would not see in any other blockbuster movie except for this one.
Yeah.
Only a Mad Max movie could get away with that nowadays. Yeah, I love that there was no compromise with this either. I guess there were a lot of complaints. A lot of people complained that it wasn't bloody enough.
Mm.
I can kind of see where that could be weird for people, but at the same time, when it needs to be, it gets there. There's not really that many scenes that really, really call for it. I mean, I know you kind of, with the way these people look and everything and what they're doing, you kind of expect that this is kind of a horrifically graphic movie, but it's not really. There are moments of it, sure, but it's not, it's not something that needs that to be anything more.
They could have pushed a hard PG-13 and it would have been fine.
Yeah, that would have...
Hard PG-13.
There was a lot of fuss around how this one shouldn't be. Once again, I'm sorry to keep calling it out like this. I don't mean to be tearing it down this much. We talked about how Beyond Thunderdome is kind of the one that's... Oh, that one's in this series too.
Mm-hmm.
That one's PG-13, while the others are. And I think people were afraid if this had gotten a PG-13, which nowadays would happen. Like, a lot of people were were entirely under the impression it was probably going to be at first. They probably thought they'd be getting another Beyond Thunderdome if it was PG-13.
That makes sense, actually.
And when that R rating got slapped on it, there was a lot of relief from fans of the original series. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's only, maybe 2 scenes specifically that come to mind that would have gotten a VR, because there's not language or anything.
No, there really isn't.
So,
there's brief nudity, but that's about it.
Oh, yeah, there was that, too.
You can get away in that in PG-13 nowadays.
Yeah. And there's another thing they do that kind of brings on something a little newer, is they do something that I don't remember having been done yet, unless I'm really blanking on something. The thing about the Mad Max movies is all of the action scenes take place, in the desert sun during the day. When the sun is highest in the skies, usually when everything and shit goes down. We actually get a Mad Max action scene that takes place at night. There are a couple of scenes that take place at night in the desert, and, the whole thing is tinted blue, and it looks really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And the action scene that takes place, it's not the final action scene, but it's a well-sized action scene. And it was really interesting to... I know it seems small, but when you've watched the other series, it's very interesting to see a Mad Max action scene take place in the dark. It's different. And once again, a good thing for that. So yes, I'm not I'm not going absolutely totally insane for it like a lot of people are, but at the same time, I still have a very positive attitude towards it. Like I said, most people are insane for The Road Warrior, and it's just a movie that I really, really like. I don't, go that insane for it. But this is a series that I really, really like. Beyond Thunderdome intact, sure. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's really not. And there are some really, really, standout amazing scenes in this. A scene I'd never thought I'd see in one of these movies. Probably because of budget constraints in the 80s. The scene where they go inside the sandstorm, and everything that happens in there, and it's like being inside hell, of all this chase is going down. And it's really a sight to behold. A lot of this movie is. So yeah, I think it's one of those movies where it'll eventually die down a little bit, but there's a lot of love for this movie right now, and I get it where it's coming from. I do, even if I'm not exactly in that, it's really that amazing thing. But it's definitely worth checking out, and it's quite a thrill ride for sure. I don't know. It's way too early to say how I would put it up with the others. So I'd need to watch all 4 of them again, maybe a year from now when this one's really, really settled in and it can be seen from that kind of perspective. But like I said, this is coming from somebody where the first one was always my particular favorite, but I know pretty much everybody in the world says The Road Warrior, but yeah, it's all good. Yes. I wish I could have been a lot more enthusiastic and, like, you know...
Same here.
Throwing shit around and saying, oh my god, I've seen the most amazing thing ever. But no, it's very wild and intense and fucking crazy and, really, really fun. But yeah, that's
about it.
Yeah, it's fun. But that's still...
that's all you need.
That's still really good.
Most people, that's all you need, though, honestly.
Yeah, and to be able to sustain that for 2 hours without feeling like it's dragging, that's a pretty big thing too. Because movies have a huge problem with dragging nowadays, but this movie really, really keeps pushing it to where you don't even... That's not really something you even think about. Because it's just always... This movie's always happening.
And the fade to black is basically just so you can catch your breath.
Yeah. So, yes, that's what we have here. I was afraid it was going to be a little off-putting because the other ones are just a swift hour and a half each. So I thought it was going to be kind of off-putting that this one goes an extra half hour. But they have enough to work with to do that. Yes, am I missing... I feel like I'm missing something. Maybe I'm not. Maybe that was about it. So yeah, just make sure you go in. Like I said, I don't know how much the 3D, like, you know... I really wish I had seen it in 2D instead. That's the way George Miller said you should see it.
And we've got a 2 coming out, and even a 3 is on the horizon too, so...
Yeah.
The characters will continue.
But, yeah, that's... Like I said, I wish I was more enthusiastic, but maybe... If it wasn't, you know, I do my absolute best to not do the whole, you know, it's had a 99% for like a really, really long time now. It was 100, then it was 98, and now it's back up to 99, the last I saw. It came out today, so I'm sure it'll, you know, go to a more stable number, that's not as, you know, far up, but still, maybe I'm very curious if I had no idea whatsoever what the critical reception was gonna be, how this would have gone down, because it's kind of hard when you look at that.
Yeah.
Because this is a reception that an action movie has not had for a long time.
It's a lot to live up to.
Like, this is almost like, it almost reminds, it's not quite this big of a deal, but looking at the reviews specifically, kind of reminds me of when the first Dark Knight review started coming out in 2008. It was that crazy. Yeah, and maybe because it's so long awaited and it's actually, you know, worth the time it was to anticipate. Because people have been anticipating... People who were alive when Beyond Thunderdome came out have been waiting for this movie 5 years before I was born. So... Take that for what you will, I guess. So yes, try to make sure you don't, you know, buy too much into the hype, or you're going to be disappointed for sure.
Yep.
And you're probably going to... I don't even think you need to tell people anymore to see stuff in 2D. I think audiences know that now. Because 3D showings around here don't do anything.
No, they really don't.
People finally realize it.
Well, the company doesn't, but that's something that's never going to change.
Yeah. Okay, before you get in trouble, let's go to the second movie.
Oh, God. I've been dreading you talking about this.
It turns out Owen was fired today.
Yeah.
Okay. Damn it. Our second movie is Pitch Perfect 2.
Oh, God.
We actually watched this last night because it was the choice. Do we watch Mad Max on Thursday and Pitch Perfect on Friday, or the other way around? And I told you, we're going to watch Pitch Perfect on Thursday, because there's no way I'm watching Mad Max first and then having nothing to look forward to. We're getting the shitty shit out of the way so we can have something to look forward to the next day. And so this is what happened last night. I just gotta throw something out there immediately before we talk about anything else in this movie. The opening scene of this movie. Was that a special effects Obama? Or was that Obama?
You know, honestly, it could go either way.
Because he didn't do anything to show that he was actually in this movie. It seemed like they just had footage of him.
I would say so.
So, I don't know. But that just... I don't know.
Let's find out.
That's neither a compliment nor a criticism. I was just kind of... I know people gave him shit for going on Jimmy Kimmel, but on Jimmy Kimmel he can address, things and, kind of get out to the people can see him and still, hear what he has to say. A cameo in a Pitch Perfect movie, I'm surely to God that was not like, surely to God that was not real.
I don't know.
Okay. So, having mentioned that, you probably can guess that this is a movie that I wasn't looking forward to if I hadn't made that obvious in the past couple of videos it's been brought up in. Yeah, because I am not a fan of the first one at all. I mean, really think about it. Anna Kendrick is probably a nice person in real life.
She's awesome.
I'm sure she's lovely. I'm absolutely positive she's probably lovely in real life.
She's amazing. But
when I have seen her in movies, which, thinking back, is actually quite a few already. Like when she was in Up in the Air, which she got an Oscar nomination for. She's kind of the last thing I think about when I think of Up in the Air. So I remember Danny McBride before I remember her. So before I was gonna go into, this is one scene I thought she was good in Up in the Air, but then I'm gonna totally abandon Pitch Perfect and start talking about Up in the Air, and it's gonna be a disaster, so I'll just come right back here. But wow, I wish I was somewhat Up in the Air right now instead, because I have so many good things to say about Up in the Air.
Find something to go against it then, and you're good.
I just bought it the other day, finally. Like 6 years later. I don't know why it took me so long.
Find a versus concept, and there you go.
So, I was not a fan of the first one at all. The point I was getting at was Anna Kendrick. So, you have this character that she's playing, who I really, really don't like as a person. This, Becca is her name?
Yes.
I don't like Becca. I don't like her at all. And then you have Rebel Wilson. Once again, I state, must be lovely in real life. Really. I'm sure she's a lot of fun in real life. But Jesus Christ. My point is, you have this character, played by Anna Kendrick, and you have this character played by Rebel Wilson, and they're in a movie about an a cappella group. There's just nothing appealing I can find in these movies, really. And then you pair them up, well, not pair them up, but you group them together, and this is making me lose everything. I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about anymore, because this movie's just fried my brain entirely. You group them with a group of girls, and what you do is you take each girl and you make them one joke. And they are just that one joke forever. And you have a movie on your hands that everybody wants to quote and everybody wants to watch over and over again. And everybody wants to make Fat Amy this pop culture icon of sorts. And just none of this is resonating with me. None of this is working for me at all. So this movie begins, and Fat Amy does the thing where she accidentally flashes the president when her thing rips. And we're seeing a whole bunch of news footage of all the talk shows and all that. Kimmel talks about it. Everybody talks about it. The View comes on, and that was Rosie Perez, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea she was doing that. I mean, I know that it's like a revolving door that place is, but
yeah, pretty much.
But still, Rosie Perez is talking about the incident with Fat Amy and the president. And then it just kind of, whooshes out of the news footage and goes into the real movie now. And as soon as that scene happened, I was like, you know, the most depressing thing about this movie is going to be that is the last time we see Rosie Perez. That made me really... That one little shot made me wish she was actually a star in this movie, but no, because she's so underrated. I miss Rosie Perez. She needs to be in more things. I think the last decent-sized role she had was in Pineapple Express. But anyway, before I start talking about how great Pineapple Express is, because I want to do anything but talk about Pitch Perfect 2, let's keep going. Okay, so, we have this very sloppy introduction of Haley Steinfeld, because we have to introduce a new character, because there's not a lot of ideas going into this sequel. It's because the first one made a lot more money than they thought they did, and everybody fell in love with it for some ungodly reason. So they were like, okay, let's do another one. As long as we make Rebel Wilson more prominent in it, people won't care what the fuck else is in it. And good luck, Elizabeth Banks. Yes, they did give they did give the directing job to Elizabeth Banks, and that's the one thing. Okay, that is like the one silver lining here. If this movie has to be a success, at least maybe that will help Elizabeth Banks get more directing gigs. And even if it's directing shitty movies like this, if Elizabeth Banks is finding success, I'm okay with it. Having said that, though, what they've basically done is, okay, maybe I should throw one more compliment out there. There's actually, okay, listen. The one thing about this movie that is incredibly, incredibly shocking to me is, despite basically just rehashing the first one and not really doing much of anything with it, it's actually a little better than the first one. Just a little bit. That's like saying, I don't know. But, yeah, this one is slightly, ever so slightly more entertaining than the first one. But that just shows you how much I truly hate the first one. So we are, I'm all over the place, I forgot where I was going now. Let me get back to that. We are sloppily introduced to Haley Steinfeld, because we have one scene that is playing out, and then we suddenly cut to the introduction of Haley Steinfeld, whose mother was in this group forever ago, and she was like a big deal, so now she's basically continuing the legacy. Now, the thing is I don't know, maybe I'm getting nitpicky here, but just the way this scene was introduced was weird to me, and very off-putting, because you have this scene over here. It's the scene where they're in the office with John Michael Higgins and Elizabeth Banks, and they're being told that they're basically being, like, expelled unless they win this competition. You know, the really, really far-fetched storylines. And just when this scene seems like it's about to end, we suddenly cut to the introduction of Haley Steinfeld, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess that scene's over now. Let's see what Haley Steinfeld is doing. But then, after we kind of introduce Haley Steinfeld, it cuts back to that scene and finishes it, and then we go back to Haley Steinfeld going into the building. And could you have maybe finished the scene in the office before we met Haley Steinfeld? I'm just throwing that question out there. I don't know. Whatever you want to do, fine. You're clearly gonna do it, you fucking movie. So, all the characters that everybody loved is back. And by characters, I mean that one joke that was told over and over again that everybody really liked is back for more. We have, obviously, Rebel Wilson's character is a one-joke idea. Her fucking name tells you she's a one-joke idea. And then you have the one girl who has bad things happen to her, where she says, like, I once had diarrhea for 7 years, or something. And then there, like, right after that is the, when I was a baby, my brother tried to sell me, or something. And that is all she does. And then there's the girl that, like, talks really quietly and just says creepy things and does creepy things. That's her thing forever. And the issue with this, the reason these characters are annoying because they're one-joke ideas, are the fact that that is all they exist for, despite the world around them. This is one of those movies where it does not care. Everybody, the thing I like to call Judd Apatow syndrome. Nobody gives a fuck what kind of dialogue is in the scene. They just want to say lines that people will quote. That's all they want to do. So what happens here is this movie is made up entirely of scenes where people will be discussing what is going on in this story, and then suddenly completely dialogue that is not cohesive to anything. People will just kind of say random lines that are supposed to be funny, that have nothing to do with anything right in the middle of this scene. Just for the sake of that. I don't even know what to call that. So, and then we have, here's a couple things, okay. Obviously you have to do the romance thing on the side. Because, here's the thing, having these a cappella competitions with these really long 20-minute scenes of just people singing random modern songs, that is not enough to sustain your runtime that you're clearly stretching as far as you can take it. So now we need 2 romantic storylines. Plus there's another subplot, but we'll get to that in a second. Naturally, what you do when you make a sequel to a comedy that was successful for no reason, you take the breakout side character and you give them more shit to do. Even though all you're doing is amping up your runtime, and there's nothing progressing here. You just want to give this character more screen time so the fans will, react with glee that they're just looking at that person. They're just completely... What I'm saying is Fat Amy gets a love story. It's kind of started in the first one. It was, what's that fucking guy's name? Adam Devine. Having him and Adam Levine in kind of the same area is confusing.
They're both massive toolboxes, so it works.
Yeah. Well, anyway, there's that going on now. And then we also have... Do you happen to remember... The huge, one of the biggest aspects of the first movie was the love story between Anna Kendrick and Skylar Astin. You do remember that? Okay, because I don't think the writers of this movie did. Yeah. Because this is what, I mean, not that I would say, oh, please give us more of that shit. But here's the thing, yeah, let's see how many more fucking times you can quote The Breakfast Club. You're so fucking, hip. What they do with Skylar Astin's character is they have one scene together, and every other time they're in the movie, they're still a couple, okay? And the whole first movie spent its whole runtime building up to this. So apart from that one scene they spend together where she's late showing up to a party, the rest of their screen time together is running into each other by accident. What kind of relationship is this? And they don't even talk about each other when they're separated. They just kind of forget they exist until they run into each other at a competition and are surprised to see the other. I don't know what happened there. So there's that. Now, there is another subplot here, where the movie kind of tried to save itself by hiring Keegan-Michael Key.
Yes.
Who can make anything funny. He made his scenes in Let's Be Cops funny.
Yes.
To make something in Let's Be Cops funny was miraculous to see him do.
Correct.
So way to go, man. And there's another, that kind of branches off into another funny thing. There's a Snoop Dogg cameo. And it sounds like fucking, of course, but it's actually a pretty funny scene because of Snoop Dogg, because he was probably improving, because God knows this script couldn't come up with anything. And there's no there's not even really a conflict in this movie, except there's the thing where she's interning with Keegan-Michael Key, and she has to keep that a secret because they're gonna they gotta eventually branch out and do their own thing, and she's got to really keep this a secret. There's going to be a big thing. And that really doesn't even go that much anywhere. And then apart from that, there's really... They just kind of go from scene to scene, and then suddenly there is a final competition. And that's all the movie is. There's no real thing going on here. Though we do have to have the thing where they go into David Cross's basement, and they do the big thing with, like, the Green Bay Packers cameos, and Joe Lashrulio, and I think I recognize somebody else on their side, but I can't remember who it was now. Obviously there's a big, one of those sing-off things. And, of course, we're right in the center of the movie, and it's down to our heroes and the people who are being perceived as the villains, the German team or whatever they were. They were Globo Gym, basically. And...
They were Iceland from the Mighty Ducks.
And you know it's going to come down to the two of them, because here's the thing. I hope I'm not spoiling anything here, but when there is a competition in the middle of a movie... what needs to go down. Would I be spoiling too much to say that they lose this round so they can win at the end? I don't know. Is it? Do people still not know this yet? Okay. I'm not this movie's biggest fan. And I was actually feeling more generous to it last night than I am now. Having revisited it in my head. And another thing, just to amp up the runtime, we have two kind of romantic stories going on here, and then there's the whole competition thing, and then there's the internship subplot. There is a whole section of this movie where they have to go to, like, a cappella boot camp or whatever the fuck that is, and this is, like, really late in the movie too. So I don't get it. I don't get what they were going for with making this movie, apart from the fact that... I mean, I know it's obvious that just the first one made a lot of money, they weren't expecting that, and they wanted to give something that the fans of the first one would eat up. And they know they don't have to try to do that. I hope I'm not being too condescending, but that's just the way it is, really. Honestly, there is one thing... shitty storytelling aside, and worthless characters and worthless subplots aside, there is one thing that could totally save this movie, that just doesn't. And I talked about it last week. Hot Pursuit is a pretty shitty movie, but it was saved because I thought it was funny. This movie is just not goddamn funny. Nothing. These characters do fucking nothing for me at all. And these movies are just not gonna do it for me. And I'm pretty sure they're planning 3. I think I read that somewhere. I'm sure this one will be a success, so there shouldn't be any surprise to that.
It will probably take the weekend. But,
as I said before, if I must look at some kind of bright side, whatever keeps Elizabeth Banks working, fine. Okay, our third movie is Maggie, which I am not sure how people are reacting to this. I haven't really read reviews or anything for it. The only thing I knew was... it was a zombie movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Abigail Breslin. And my second thought was Abigail Breslin's in another zombie movie. This seems a little redundant right now. But it's probably not... I don't want to feed into this movie's ego or anything, but what the general thing here is it's not what you're expecting. Now, the thing about it is I imagine if people just kind of hear the concept, they're going to think it's something that's not. I mean, I don't even know why I'm building up. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Say somebody tells you there is a zombie movie out right now starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. you can imagine what's probably going through their head if they don't know what Maggie is.
They've already bought tickets. Somehow, some way, they've already bought tickets.
What this is we're living in that age now where I think I talked about this when I talked about 28 Days Later, which is a movie that I love. It's one of my favorites, of course. But the thing about it is you want characters in zombie movies or zombie TV shows. You have to specify that now.
Yeah.
You want them to be real characters that you care about. And you want as much focus on them as you do the zombies. But the issue with this is putting a lot of focus on the humans in a zombie storyline has become its own cliche. Pretty much. Like everybody, like people still fucking worship the ground the Walking Dead walks on. I wasn't meaning to go there. And because they say stuff like, oh, there's actually barely any zombies in it. It's all about the human element. And they never say the word zombies. They say walkers instead because it's so clever and shit. And people just eat that shit up like it's brains. But
that's the reason it's at Horror Nights every year.
And this is just really goddamn played out, but this movie kind of continues on that kick where they use the zombie genre for things much deeper because this has never been done before. It's such an original concept in 2015. But 20 Days Later was 13 years ago. That wasn't even the start of it either, I don't think. But Romero's movies obviously from the 60s forward, but the resurgence of it was kind of in the 20 Days Later territory. So what Maggie does is it basically takes the zombie genre and basically tries to shove down our throats the whole is euthanasia right thing, because you gotta have subtext to get people's minds working, because that's how you get critical acclaim. But here's the problem though. This shit's long play out. But now that I've gotten that out there, I'm gonna start being a little nicer to this movie. Because that's one thing. That's just kind of something that going into it and seeing what it's getting at. That's what I throw to that. But here's the thing. The plot being that Abigail Breslin is the daughter of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and she is just she's off somewhere and she's been bitten by one. So he goes out and he brings her home, and the idea is that they're gonna keep her until she's gets to a point where they have to, basically put her down. So she kind of has to, it's like getting your affairs in order before you go to prison or whatever. You're allowed to have the person, but then you either have to send them to quarantine. But the problem is that Schwarzenegger has no intention of sending her to quarantine, because the doctor is a family friend, and he tells them if she goes to quarantine, it's going to be really, really bad. We learn that quarantine is basically all the zombies are put in one place, and they're put in there to basically eat each other, and it's horrific and painful, and it's bad news. So basically the whole movie is coming to a point to where she's going to need put down when the time comes, personally. And we just kind of have to get to that point. But in the meantime, we kind of have the father-daughter relationship, and she has, her teenage life going on with her boyfriend and her friends and stuff like that. And that's basically what it is. It's basically like a death row euthanasia type thing. That's basically what it's getting at. And it's, and it really, I don't know. I hate to get so personal. It's just you can kind of, and you can tell how hard they're trying to do something different. Like how they've taken the zombie genre, but they've put a real, context in it. And it's shot really artsy-like. A lot of it, like the aesthetic of it in general, actually looks like the fucking Walking Dead, like the way it's shot, kind of. And there's a lot of really, really predictable dialogue beats. It's one of those where, like, over half the time somebody says a line, you can kind of say the next line with the character, because you know what's coming. I'll give you one example. You normally lose at this game, but let's see if you can figure this one out. He's just brought Abigail Breslin home, and she's sitting up in her bedroom, and she's hugging her knees. And Schwarzenegger comes up the steps, and he comes in the room, and he says, Jesus. And he says, your stepmom has made you dinner. She says,
oh, God.
She's sitting up in her room upstairs, hugging her knees, thinking. When Dad comes upstairs and says, your mother has made you dinner, the response is always,
go.
I'm not hungry.
I'm always not hungry.
Yes. There we go. You fail every time. One of these days you will get it.
No, I was wondering if maybe the stepmother was a zombie or something, so. That's a possibility.
The stepmother is Julie Richardson.
My mom is not alive anymore, or something like that, because she's holding her hands across her knees for that reason.
No, when the daughter is upstairs in her bedroom with the door shut, she's always not hungry.
Nah.
And then, and, you know, she's turning into a zombie. So, now, the thing about it is, it's also, despite the fact that there seems to be, you know, there does seem to be care in this movie. Like, it's not just, you know, I made a movie and I'm trying to be different and be critically acclaimed and stuff like that. I'm kind of cutting it short a little bit. There are some scenes where it really comes off like, you know, there was a legitimate heart put in it. For starters, Schwarzenegger and Breslin's performances are really, really great. I know a lot of people say, people kind of laugh in the direction of Schwarzenegger giving a dramatic performance, but he's always, I've been championing him for a long time now, and, you know, to be totally honest, I always figured he could if he just had that type of role, and he shows that he can. I'm sure there's still, you know, it's not different enough to where I'm pretty sure people are still going to say he's still just being Schwarzenegger, whatever the fuck they're going to say, but I thought he did it really well, and Breslin is really, really great here, and brings a lot of sympathy to the character. And that's really what keeps the movie going and keeps it, you know, keeps it from succumbing to the obvious setup. But despite all that, it still feels like it's kind of, sometimes it still feels kind of half-assed. Like, the way it's put together sometimes feels kind of sloppy. There's a lot of scenes where people just kind of abruptly show up in places, and it kind of feels like scenes are missing. So there's not really a whole lot to offer as far as flow is concerned. But as far as it's not without scenes that have a lot of power to them. There's one particular scene with her and her friend after they come back from the party they were at. That's a really genuine emotional scene. But then they have some bullshit where they go into the side story where she has like a kind of boyfriend or whatever who's also infected, and I mean, I know you kind of have to. I know it kind of helps to give her character more, you know, sympathy and something to, just kind of some happiness to find in her life before it gets worse or whatever. But it didn't really feel like it had to be there. Though he does give us a couple of crucial plot points. So. In exposition. And there is one, like, at the very end, there's a very nice suspenseful scene that's well done. But, you know, for the most part, it's just kind of that movie where it's, you know, there's an inevitable scenario and you just kind of have to wait for it to play out, and it kind of, your interest kind of goes in and out. And it's mostly, if it weren't for the performances in this would probably be not that great. But they really carry it into something that's, you know, it won't kill you to watch. I'm sure I'm sure people who are all about this genre still will eat it up just like everything else in the genre, but I am really bitter towards audiences in this review. I hope I'm not offending anybody. You assholes will just eat anything. No, that's how I feel about that. Yeah, that's kind of another one like Pitch Perfect where I was kind of being more generous to it before than I was after talking about it. Oops. Okay, our last movie is Five Flights Up. I have no idea if anybody knows what this is. It's a movie starring Morgan Freeman and Diane Keaton. And they are an old couple who are getting ready to sell the apartment that they've lived in for 40 years. Cynthia Nixon is their niece, I think. And she's kind of their in-between person that's out there trying to set up all the open house and all that. And that's basically what it's one of those old people being old movies. It's exactly what you expect. The opening scene, I swear to God, is Morgan Freeman walking around, walking his dog, and he's narrating about the younger generation, and he's going on about they've all got their smartphones out and they're not paying attention to the real world. It's that kind of thing.
How does no one know about this? That just sounds like custom made for certain areas, especially here.
I don't know. But there's a few more things in here going on. This is kind of a weird movie.
Sounds like it.
There are a few plots going on here. Not only are they trying to get rid of their apartment, but obviously they've got to find a new one. So there's that going on. And then there's this thing where their dog is like ruptured a disc or something. Their dog's really fucked up and has to go to the vet, and they're not sure if it's gonna make it. It's got to go through surgery, and they keep getting calls about, its current status and whatever. That's going on through the whole thing. And then there's this other thing, this continuous thing going on through the whole thing, where there is a possible terrorist attack on a bridge that's like really, really big news that everybody's in the movie is paying attention to. And that pretty much only exists so Freeman can have a catharsis at the end that's really not that big of a deal. So, yeah, this movie's just a whole bunch of different things happening that kind of come to a point, but don't really seem really worth the trip. Like I just said about Maggie, if you have to watch this movie, obviously, like I just said, it's a movie that stars Morgan Freeman and Diane Keaton, so if you're gonna watch it, you're obviously just watching it for them, and that's pretty much the only reason to. There's also, we also keep getting flashbacks of their younger versions, when they were like, in the, because obviously there was a time where, a white girl marrying a black guy it was in that time frame where that was really taboo, and so that, you would think that's kind of what they go with, but there's only like one scene that talks about that. Every other time it's them worrying about his art and fighting and shit. But those actors weren't bad either. The woman playing young Diane Keaton is really, really convincing. Like, like she doesn't look like the real young Diane Keaton that we actually know of, that we saw in older movies, but she's really, really good at playing the younger version of this Diane Keaton character. And that just that only happens a few times. Like, we think it's going to kind of be this parallel thing where things converge, but no, they just kind of show us a few flashbacks just for a little more, I guess, for kind of a look as far as how their marriage has progressed, and how they've not really changed, but at the same time they've loved each other for all these years and stuff like that. I guess that's what the purpose is. I don't know, a lot of the stuff in this movie doesn't really, I mean, it does kind of all, resolve in some way and gets to a stopping point, but I don't know, it just kind of seems all over the place until and it's not something where it's like, oh, it all makes sense now. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, the movie can end now. That's about it. Like, if this movie had ended right in the middle with nothing resolved, I would probably have not even thought had a second thought about it. I wonder what happened. It was just, no, I wouldn't care if it had just stopped halfway through. That probably makes it sound worse than it actually is. It's not that bad. It's mainly worth watching just for them, but even so, the performances of two actors that are already established as great can only go so far, and make something out of that's really, really nothing. There is one really funny thing where, you could tell that this movie obviously was not made for much. Like, they basically just took Morgan Freeman, Diane Keaton, and Cynthia Nixon, and they got a camera, and they walked around New York a couple times, and that's all the budget was. That they couldn't specify whether it was Twitter or Facebook or whatever, because they have a picture of the terrorist on the news, and it seems like it's this big news thing, and the reporter says, and we were able to retrieve this picture of him from his social networking site.
Jeez. Picture from a social networking site?
Yes, this was the fakest news I have ever seen in a movie ever, I think.
Who says that?
I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's what's going on here. It has, yeah, it's basically one of those, you know, it's basically like, a straight version of Love is Strange. That's what it sounds like. That's kind of what it is. Only they're not apart. They're always together. But it's just one of those movies. It's the younger generation, and but then there's the other half that's the nice romantic side where it is, you know, they are convincing together, and they sound like a weird couple on paper, Morgan Freeman and Diane Keaton, but they do make a really convincing couple that have been in love over the past 40 years. But
I reiterate,
they really try. How what?
How is this not known by people? You got the cast, you got the story, it's perfect for the general public. I have no idea why not more people know about it.
It's like, what was that really shitty movie that came out recently that had Christopher Plummer in it? Elsa and Fred, I think. The one with him and Shirley MacLaine, I think it was.
Again, how does that not...
All they did was fucking talk about La Dolce Vita for an hour and a half until one of them died.
Spoiler!
I can't remember which one of them died. Maybe it was a side character that died. One of them died, I think. I don't remember.
I just talked about La Dolce Vita until one of them died. Yeah, just sweep that under the carpet. It's fine. No harm done.
Well, she like tried to convince him that she was Anita Ekberg or something. I don't remember much about that movie. There were a lot of like side actors in that, like a lot of supporting actors in that movie that we know, but I don't remember now. Wendell Pierce, I think, was a mover or something. But anyway, that's. Yeah, Five Flights Up is not as bad as I just made it sound. It's much easier to get through than that, but, you know, I don't know. I don't know why I got so fucking angry at these movies when we started this, because I was relatively indifferent about a lot of them when we started, but...
I think you're just pissed off today, honestly.
I don't know what happened. I just saw Mad Max. I shouldn't be.
Yeah, but even that wasn't as satisfying as it should have been.
Well, I don't know. It's just fine. Okay, we're done here.
Alright, so ends another edition of AJ's Movie Reviews, and as always, we're going to do a star amount real quick. Mad Max Fury Road?
3.
Pitch Perfect 2?
1.5. See, it was going to be 2. It was actually going to be 2 last night. If I had done this review last night, it probably would have been 2. But it had just enough time to fucking fester in there. Like this horrible tumor.
real quick, you guys probably know my love for Anna Kendrick, and even to a lesser extent, Brittany Snow. And I really love John Michael Higgins. John Michael Higgins is awesome, but he's not written correctly in the movie.
And the star amount for Maggie will be 2. It was going to be 2.5 a little bit ago.
I am still talking.
But then I talked about it. Pitch Perfect 2 is out of this equation now.
It suffers.
There are girls in it that he finds attractive. That's what he's trying to tell you.
Okay. You mentioned this to me, but you didn't say it in the review. You talked about the fact that someone else mentioned that it pretty much suffers from Hangover 2.
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
I think it suffers from Cars 2, because it's a movie I've seen. Too much of a character that doesn't need to be there in the first place. Five Flights Up.
2.
Yeah,
that didn't go down. That was always going to be 2.
Okay, you're not being ungenerous here. Okay.
But if I had started comparing it more to Elsa and Fred, which is a movie I hated, it probably would have gone down.
Yeah, it's like when... Oh my god, there's a Phineas and Ferb...
I think I talked about Elsa and Fred now more than I did when I actually reviewed it in one of those compilation videos.
Okay, there's a Phineas and Ferb episode where basically they make a movie, and the whole thing just hinges on this one movie screening. And everybody loves it and everything, but all of a sudden Dr. Doof comes in, and one of his innators turns everybody into old people. And there's like, I hate this sucks. That's pretty much what you're turning into right now, right before my eyes. It's how it works, man. It's a bad week for movies.
Mad
Max
is here.
Mad Max was good, but like you said, Mad Max is not great.
That would not have been an issue if it weren't for the...
Do you think you would have loved it better if it was 2D?
I probably would have had something to do with it, and I think, I would not be talking about Mad Max being anything lower if it weren't for the fact that such a positive reaction it's getting.
It had, like I said to someone the other day, I was like, you know what, there's no way it can live up to all this because it's got way too much hype going for it right now. I think
my reaction to it would still be the same. I just wouldn't I just wouldn't involve but it's not as good as some people say.
You're going to have to defend this review.
It's always been that way, though, because, like I said, I've always really liked The Road Warrior, but never loved it the way people do, so I'm about at Fury Road where I probably,
would have been otherwise.
That seems about right, yeah.
Okay, so that ends another week of AJ's movie reviews. Tomorrow, I got a surprise for you guys. I don't even know what's coming up tomorrow, so watch it. Have fun. Sunday, brand new versus Cryptic Comment is Amnesia, and I can't tell you what next week's is going to be because I don't know. I found out Ashley is actually having some problems right now. He's sick, so he may not be joining me. But no worries. Come Sunday night will be Payback's Popcast with Mr. Entertainment. On Monday, we're going to be doing the WWE Raw Popcast with Mr. Entertainment. And, of course, that'll lead us into NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, Sip and Snack, and AJ's movie reviews next week will be Poltergeist and Tomorrowland. Should be interesting. Let's hope. Gaming with Ash returns on the regular day and time on Saturday and Sunday. Brand new versus. Watch videos this week to find out exactly what we're going to be doing. So, that being said, thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?